There are only two ways of getting things done, and one is much better than the other. If you have a tough time, doing the things that are really important to you or that need to be done, you're probably not the problem. You just chose the first, less ideal workflow. But no worries, I've got you covered, because in this video we're going to look at a better and more reliable way of approaching work, one which ensures that you will accomplish what is meaningful and important to you, whether it's working on your business or career, mastering a new skill, or just learning new stuff in general. That being said, let's jump right into it. So, what's the problem here? The problem is that most people rely solely on motivation, which is the first and worst way of getting things done. If you choose to do stuff only when you feel inspired or creative or when you're in the right mood, it's typically one of two things. You're either unconsciously using it as an excuse to procrastinate, like I can't do this because I don't feel creative right now, or you're a bit of a perfectionist and that's holding you back. And although this motivation approach might work in a few isolated cases, like talented artists, most of the times it will fail to yield the desired results because it lacks something very important. Consistency. Let's put it this way. The reason why you shouldn't take action based on your level of motivation is that no matter what you do, there will be times when you just won't feel like working. And let me tell you, there will be a lot of them. Therefore, you cannot create a schedule around this, because you never know when you'll be in the mood or when the next spark of inspiration will ignite. Besides, if you think hard enough, you'll always be able to come up with a good excuse to why this isn't the right time to do the difficult thing. So yeah, the main problem with this motivation approach is that it's unreliable, meaning that it's very difficult to plan out in advance, follow a specific schedule, and ultimately finish before a set deadline. And not having deadlines for your work or projects is a very bad way to go. If you're not using deadlines, you're really missing out, because there's this thing called the Parkinson's law, which says that work will expand to fill the time you allocate to it. So, for example, let's say you have to write an essay for school over the weekend. With no self-imposed deadline, you'll probably finish it on Sunday evening or something like that. At least that was the case for me in high school sometimes. But if you put in the energy and commit to finishing it in just 3 hours, there's a high chance you'll be able to do it without sacrificing much of the quality. It sounds counterintuitive, but the reality is that when we have a lot of available time for a specific task, we often waste a lot of it on non-important or irrelevant things. It's just how our brains work. However, when we set a tight deadline, we're actually forcing ourselves to focus on the essential stuff, which is writing the essay. So no more overthinking or checking our phone and stuff like that. Learning to choose appropriate deadlines for your tasks is one of the main pillars of productivity, because it really pays off. After all, productivity is all about spending your time efficiently and effectively, right? Okay. We've talked about why relying on motivation doesn't work. Now let's dive into the solution. The main idea is to avoid asking yourself questions like, do I feel like working today? Or am I in the mood to do this thing right now? Simply asking such questions gives you the opportunity to procrastinate or not do the thing at all. And we don't want that. So what about if we had no choice? What if the decision to work on that project today at 6 p.m. has already been made in advance? Not having the option to procrastinate means that you just get to do the work, right? And that's how you get things done. All you need is to plan things in advance and make a commitment to follow the plan. This is most commonly referred to as being disciplined, and in my opinion, it's a much more efficient and effective workflow than the motivation alternative, because it's guaranteed to work. Sure, being disciplined doesn't always feel good, I know, but if you want to accomplish your goals, you have to put in the work regardless of how you feel. In a way, it's kind of relieving, because you don't have to worry about what you need to do next or when you should do it and stuff like that. The default is just working according to schedule as often as possible, because from time to time life will get in the way. It happens. But more often than not, you'll be able to stick to the schedule and make a great amount of progress. That being said, let's now talk about how to create such a schedule so that it's as easy as possible to follow. The first step is to figure out when you're most energetic during the day, because that's when you'll encounter the least resistance, and so it's the perfect time to start the most important and potentially difficult task or activity that you have to do. For example, some people, myself included, reach their energy peak throughout the morning, and I think that's the most common situation. After lunch, however, they become a little sleepy and not as efficient. So it's recommended to leave necessary but not so important stuff for later in the day. Other people are more energetic during the night, and so their ideal routine would look completely different. You get the point. So you have to figure this out, because the next step is to put the recurring tasks in Google Calendar or another calendar of your choice. This is crucial because the goal of being disciplined is to create habits, which are activities or actions that you do regularly. If you have designated days and time intervals for them, that's even better. Take brushing teeth as an example. It's a well-established habit that you do every morning and night without wondering if you're in the mood to do it. And that's because you've been doing it for a very long time. So now it's a solid part of your routine. And that's where we want to get to eventually with the other more important stuff. So here's how you get the most out of using a calendar. You essentially need to time block your activities like this. Start with the non-negotiables, the things that you absolutely have to do, like your job, eating, cooking and stuff like that. You should also have a pretty good idea of when you need to wake up every day and when you should go to bed to get enough sleep. Once that's settled, you can figure out how to fit in the other things that you wanna do throughout the week. And when you do that, remember to keep in mind your peak energy moments. If those interfere with your job and you still want to be productive after work, try a 30-minute nap. Or do something else that boosts your energy, like drinking a coffee or taking a shower. It will make a huge difference on your mood and also on your willingness to start that difficult task, because if you force yourself to do it tired or sleepy, it's gonna be torture. And one more thing. Avoid pre-scheduling every single minute of the day, as this will make you feel like you're always in a rush, and that's one of the things which will eventually lead to burnout. I've been dealing with this myself for a while, and I've come to the conclusion that having some room to breathe is so very necessary for both productivity and mental sanity. I know this sounds like the most obvious thing ever, but trust me, it's very tempting to pack your calendar with activities to feel like you're as productive as you could be. Resist that urge and give yourself some much needed space. I've gotta say though, I used to be really skeptical of this time blocking and calendar thing, especially when I had a lot more free time. It wasn't until my life got significantly busier that I realized how useful it can be. Now I see it as one of the best productivity tools to use, because it just saves a lot of time. For instance, after finishing a task, simply thinking about what to do next can strip you of 30 valuable minutes that you could spend relaxing instead. Not to mention the huge amount of time you waste in the process of actually convincing yourself to start doing the thing. So yeah, it's an incredible tool, as it has the potential to 5x your productivity at the very least. I'm definitely a believer today. Now, some people would argue that this disciplined approach will affect the quality of their work compared to relying on motivation. So the question they often have is, why not make great quality stuff less often instead of consistent mediocre work? In short, the discipline versus motivation debate comes down to quantity versus quality. This will certainly depend on the situation, so here's my take. In the beginning, when you're just getting started with something new, a project, a side hustle, learning a new skill, it's better to focus on quantity. Because as I said earlier, the goal is to establish habits that will lead to a more consistent work schedule. This is important because in the early stages there are a ton of things you don't know that need to be optimized. And the higher frequency of work will result in more opportunities to analyze what's good and what can be improved. Feedback is vital for growth, and the sooner you refine your workflow, the faster you'll reach your goals. Let's move on to the quality now, because there is a way to increase the quality of your work while still being disciplined and keeping your schedule. You simply have to allocate more time to the activity. For example, if you write blog posts and you usually release one every week, you can always make the decision to do one blog post every 2 weeks. And this way you get more time to think and be creative, and you still get to work during the time blocks that you have in the calendar. So I would say that the discipline method doesn't have to affect the quality of your work. And there's one more thing, which is very often disconsidered by many. People assume that they should wait for some divine inspiration to strike them before writing that blog post, for example. But that's not how it works. Great ideas often come after you sit down and start working. When you're deeply focused and engaged in your work, power and creativity concentrate around you, and you might be surprised to have ideas that seem to come out of nowhere. It's not just me who says this. A lot of successful authors strongly back up this idea. For example, Steven Pressfield in the book The War of Art says that performing the mundane physical act of sitting down and starting to work, he set in motion a mysterious but infallible sequence of events that would produce inspiration. Also, when we sit down and work, we become like a magnetized rod that attracts iron filings. Ideas come, insights accrete. Or Austin Kleon in Still Like an Artist says, ask anybody doing truly creative work and they'll tell you the truth. They don't know where the good stuff comes from. They just show up to do their thing. Every day. Waiting for inspiration to strike you might be a waste of your potential. I often get new ideas as I write, ideas that I didn't even think about before. And it's not valid only for writing, it's with everything. Dancing, painting, even gaming. Once you get in the flow state, meaning that you're locked in, you're deeply focused and concentrated on the task, you might just be flooded by great ideas. As a short conclusion, discipline without motivation, although not ideal, still ensures that you get things done. But motivation without discipline is more of a gamble. Waiting for inspiration or waiting to be ready in general could have you waiting forever. You don't know if or when things will be done, because if you don't have a schedule, you can't create a timeline either. So the simplest solution, and what works for me and many others, is to find your peak energy moments, time block your activities accordingly, save them in a calendar, and commit to doing them consistently until they become habits, part of your routine or lifestyle. And that will wrap up today's video. If you enjoyed the content, make sure to press the like button and subscribe to the channel because it helps a lot. Thanks for staying until the end, and I'm going to see you in the next video. Bye!